What's up, my guys? What's up, my girls? Welcome back to the Denny Flow Podcast. I'm your boy, Danny Flow. This is the Denny Flow Podcast. On the Denny Flow Podcast, I talk about philosophy of life. One of the things that is really important to me is fatherhood. Today, I'm joined with a friend that I met um, at the gym that I used to go to, I no longer go to, Quon Denny. We follow each other on Instagram. We're from the same city, we live in the same area. And as an outsider looking into his life, we're all outsiders looking into each other's life. I can tell that fatherhood is really important to him. I really admire that about um, him. It's actually a good motivator to me because we live in the same city. And so I don't have the excuse that because I was born in a certain place, I can't be a good father or I can't work hard or anything like that. So he's graciously um, has agreed to share his time with me so that he could talk a bit about his experience with family court. It's something really personal, so I very much appreciate him coming on. Quan, thank you so much. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Uh, Quan, you mentioned something. We can easily have an excuse about why we either are good fathers or not good fathers. For me, it could have been easy for me not to be a good father. Um, I got four kids. I grew up. I moved. I lived in three different cities. I grew up in mostly Rockford, born in Rockford. Moved to Detroit for a little while, then also moved to Atlanta for a little while. But for the most part, I grew up in Rockford. And one of the reasons I moved to Detroit originally was my brother I got killed when I was 9 years old. And
Sorry to hear
so
that.
my mom, she she um she she went through some struggles mentally. She didn't know how to get over it. So one of the things she did was move me to Detroit with my auntie, and it just didn't work for me. It was good for me for the time being. I was good in sports. I played sports, but I ended up moving back maybe a year or 2 years later, and I kind of raised myself for the most part since I was 15. I grew up in a neighborhood that was pretty bad. It was a lot of prostitution, a lot of drugs, um, a lot of violence for the most part. And so I say from the time I was maybe 13, 14, I kind of raised myself. And for the most part, I blame my mom for a lot of things I went through. But as I got older and I learned about mental health a lot, I learned that it necessarily wasn't her fault. She just couldn't get over my brother getting killed.
Mm.
So I was raised by a single mom. Started raising myself when I was 15. I moved out when I was 15, early 16. I sold drugs for most of my life. I don't hide from that. So I moved out, went my path, what I was doing. Um, Moved to Atlanta to get away from it a little when I was 18, but I kind of came back into it. And so when I came back, I got with now my ex-wife. I had my first daughter when I was 21 years old, and I tell her birthday's coming up in a couple of weeks, and I talked to her a couple of days ago, and I tell her, man, she saved my life for the most part. Like she made me, she was the beginning of me changing my life, like understanding that it's more to life than just self. Um, I didn't completely get out the streets, but I kind of toned it down a lot more. Um, it's I, I think for me, fatherhood is the most important thing because statistically, the way I was raised, you would think I would just kind of be not an involved father, and it was complete opposite for me. It made me want to be involved with my kids even more. So when my first daughter was born, I just took the initiative and I just jumped on top of it. Like I love fatherhood from day one, and so that kind of was my mindset throughout everything. Unfortunately, me and my now ex-wife, we didn't work out the way we all dream and hope our families would grow. Um, but it led me to battle, not really a battle, I'm gonna say, but it led me to just over time us having difference of opinions on how we raise our kids, which led me into family court. Um, There's not much I can say about family court besides it's the worst place you want to put your kids in. Like once they in that system, it kind of I mean it's the worst. It's the worst place you put your kids. Like I would recommend anybody that's going through a bad breakup, a divorce, to try to work it out because that's not a place you want to put your kids because you kind of lose all your say for both parents' perspectives. Like they kind of control how you raise your kids. Even after I'm done with everything now. They kind of have say no matter what. So, what would you if I tell you what you like to know about the family court or about how I feel about fatherhood or whatever, you know?
I think it's really, I think it's really interesting what you said that when you had your first daughter at 21, I think it's really interesting that you said that you loved fatherhood from day one. It, in my experience, and it could be the bubble that I live in, it seems like most men are trying to run away from fatherhood. Um, I don't know whether your first daughter was planned or not, but a lot of times children happen unplanned, and that's where you get a lot of deadbeat dads because maybe the woman decided to have the child and the father doesn't want to stick around, or simply they just are lucky enough to maybe not have unplanned pregnancy. What do you think it was about father that you loved instantaneously, and why do you think maybe in today, in most cases than not, and maybe that's not your experience. I don't want to speak for you, but um, why do you think maybe most men are running away from it as opposed to I'm a person that at least um, I know that fatherhood is hard and I don't have as many kids as you. I hopefully, God willing, plan on having more kids. But when I talk to younger guys, I encourage them, you know, you should be a dad, a good dad when you grow up. So I don't know. What do you think?
Um, for me, I kind of had practice. My brother, he had a lot of kids. I got 4 kids. My brother had a lot of kids.
Hmm.
So I kind of every summer from when I was like maybe 16, 17, when I was in Rockford, I kind of just brought his kids down and let them stay with me. And there was maybe 3 or 4 at the time. So I kind of had practice with kids. And then my brother that got killed, I kind of raised his son for the most part ever since I moved back to from Atlanta. So when my daughter was born, I moved back to Rockford the year before my daughter was born, and I have my nephew for the most part. He didn't stay with me, but he kind of stayed with me. He so when my daughter was born, I was like any other man, like you know, I was nervous. I mean, it's
Hmm.
different having younger siblings and my nephews, but there's nothing like your own. So
Hmm.
like I remember just being timid, hold my daughter. Like
Hmm.
it's just like it was a learning experience, man. I think a lot of dads aren't necessarily ready for the experience because it goes. It's easy to just have a kid and rely on the woman to raise a kid
Hmm.
and just go along as the quote unquote the average or the basic roles of what a man does as a father.
Hmm.
Um, I didn't want that, so
Hmm.
I wanted to learn every aspect as what being a father was. Like I took pride in changing diapers. I took pride in going to doctor appointments.
Hmm.
Um, it was just something like I didn't have a father growing up. I had a father figure after my brother got killed. I was in the Big Brother program.
Hmm.
I went with my brother once a week, maybe once every 3 weeks. So I had a little experience of a fatherly figure, but I just knew what I didn't have. I didn't want to be that for my kids for the most part. Like it's a learning experience, man. I don't think necessarily men just grow up and say I'm gonna be a deadbeat dad. I think some men just
Hmm.
run from responsibility because they scared. Because I mean,
Yeah,
you scared? You think when your son was born, was you
I was
scared
really
and
scared.
nervous?
Yeah.
So
I mean,
that's what it is.
I was happy, but I was definitely scared.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's still a lot of things. about it that I mean, I don't know if I've mentioned it, but my father passed away when I was 4, and I've always wanted kids, and I always knew that the closer it got to 4, that I would get a little bit scared, because that's when I lost my dad. So I want to make sure that, like you said, it really resonates with me that you said that um, you took pride in changing diapers and being involved because you had a father figure, but you didn't have an actual father growing up, and that's kind of what I want too. I want to be involved because there wasn't really anybody there involved with me, and like I had my mom, but I feel like it's not the. Do you think it's not the? Do you think? I mean, to me it feels like a lot of people grow up without dads, and maybe that's why there's nobody to teach them to be scared but do it anyways. Maybe.
I think the good thing about this generation is though, is I think more men are becoming better fathers compared to my generation, a little before my generation. It was easy for men just to get not be with the woman and disappear. That's kind of what
Mhm.
my dad did. Like I see my dad once a year from the time I was 9 years old.
Mm,
So once a year I seen him, but my dad was in the drugs real heavy.
mm,
By the time he died, he got his life together. I think he died when I was maybe 24, 25. So he did get to meet my first daughter. But even when I seen my dad, um, one time a year, I remember the year before he died, he came to the house, met my daughter, and we hung out for about 2, 3 hours. I never had anger towards my dad. My dad got caught in the crack era wave. Like
mm,
before he got caught in that wave, he was from what I hear, he was a good father. He was a hard worker man, and even during his struggles, he still was a hard worker man. He just that crack era wave hit a lot of the cities hard, especially the urban communities, and it just sucked a lot of our dads out the house. So, I mean, I think this generation is so far ahead of the curve as far as fatherhood, even if they're not with the woman. I'm hoping that through my experiences, like I'm I'm hoping that most men can look at it from me and say, man, like it's I look at you and you with your wife, and that's important. I think more men got to understand like one woman is where the route you want to go. Like I didn't understand that growing up because I wasn't around that. I wasn't around family. I wasn't around
mm.
married couples. I grew up and it was a good thing to have multiple women to be the player. And I think that kind of messed me up growing up a little. So
Mm.
hopefully more men understand that one woman is the most important thing. A good woman is the most important thing in your life to have and raise your family the right way.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's interesting because I mean, we were both raised by single mothers. And I mean, my mother was single for the most part. Like, she met someone when I was 7, and they ended up getting married. And I think before they ended up getting married, they had my youngest sister. Um, but I think he was kind of the mindset of the past. Like you were saying, like we have a generation with like a new mindset that even if men don't end up with the woman that they had a child with, they just have a different mindset for some reason. Um, but he kind of just worked, and that's kind of what he did. He kind of was working, and he wasn't really involved. And of course, because I was younger, I was a kid, and then a preteen, and then an adolescent. I had some fault in not really um, having a relationship with him. But I think it's interesting that I kind of had that same mindset when I was younger too, that it was about being with multiple women and how many women you could be with. And for some reason, it would almost seem that we would have turned out the opposite since we were raised by women.
Mm-hmm.
And I do remember a conversation with my mother where she said, women aren't toys. I kind of just brushed it off. And I hope that um, my current son, and God willing, if I have more sons, I hope if they hear it from me, then because they're hearing it from their father, then they'll take it seriously. You know what I mean?
Well,
I'm
look
not
at
saying that there aren't um, sons out there that are like me and that maybe didn't take their mother's words seriously. Hopefully they did. But I'm just saying, in my case, it didn't work. Um, I think before I kind of grew up, and especially before I kind of discovered my faith, I was a womanizer, and I'm not really. That's not something that I'm proud of, and I always wonder how come I turned out that way if I was raised. Not only I was raised by a woman, but not only that, I had all sisters. So you would think that I would come out the opposite, respecting women, and that wasn't in my case. And so it's very important to me to teach my son and to just preach it with my life that, yeah, one good woman is sufficient. You don't need multiple women. Wherever we learn that, wherever, you and I have different lives, but somewhere along our lives we learned that and we had to unlearn it. And so hopefully we can play a small part in helping, like you said, the newer generation not think that way.
No, I agree with you. I think it's a problem with society growing up as a man. It's like the norm to be a womanizer. And I could say that I learned valuable lessons from growing up with a single mother because it taught me responsibility, but it also taught me to respect women. Like even the things I did that was wrong, I value women still. I
Mhm.
value women emotions and their feelings the most.
Mhm.
So I had to label as a womanizer, but it wasn't necessarily the right label. I think because I didn't just be with a lot of women, I just dated a lot of women.
Mhm.
Like I would break up with a woman fast if I didn't feel like it was a woman for me and I would be in another relationship. I was
Mhm.
kind of scared of commitment when I was growing up.
Mhm.
And that label doing dating like that gives you that label easily. But
Yeah.
I think it's something with society that we don't I don't think people understand that dating is normal.
Mhm.
I think I was it's sad to say this, but was when I got married, I wasn't ready to be married.
Mhm.
I kind of settled to what society says is the perfect family structure. You
Mhm.
get a woman, you date, you marry, you have a kid, you buy a house. I kind of settled for that. And deep down, I knew I wasn't mentally ready to be married because
Mhm.
I was 20 years old when I got with my ex-wife. And I'm like, it wasn't necessarily that I was chasing the women. I just wasn't done growing as a man.
Mhm.
Like I went to work every day. I worked out every day. I took care of my family. I did everything a man's supposed to do as far as raising his family and being with his wife. But mentally, I just wasn't ready to be married, and that's what kind of me and my ex-wife. We didn't have a bad relationship. We had a great relationship. Even up until our divorce, I can honestly say we probably argued maybe 3, 4 times within the 8, 9 years we was together. Like not even raised voice arguments, just disagreements. And to be in the court system, that was the hardest thing for me because it was like this ain't the person I knew or
Mhm.
I grew up knowing. So that was the hard part about that, the whole experience with the court system.
Yeah, I think, yeah, let's talk a little bit about the court system. So I think just in you already said that the court system is the worst thing that you could do for the kids. Um, there's different opinions about the court system. I think if we ask women how they feel about the court system, they might say it's not fair towards the mother. And you might ask a handful of dads or a lot of dads, and they might say it's not fair towards the father. Do you think it's just subjective? Do you think it's depends on the judge? I think um, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you represented yourself. Do you need a lawyer for family
Um,
court? It does it.
90% of my case, I represented myself.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I did that was because um, I was divorced for 4.5 years. I didn't have many problems with my ex-wife after we got divorced. Um, I got engaged maybe 3 years after we got divorced, and that's when all the problems came. And I was kind of oblivious to the real world as far as when I'm focused, I'm in my own zone. Like, so I don't, outside world noise don't bother me, or I don't ever pay attention to it. So when I got a letter 3 years after being divorced, 3.5 years, I got a letter for child support, and I'm like, not many people. Time my kids live with me. My kids, when I got divorced, my kids live with me, and they went with their mom on the weekends. And so when I got a letter for child support, I'm like, I got divorced. We agreed on shared 50-50 custody, but we didn't necessarily do it. I just had majority of the time, and I took care of the majority of everything. So I was shocked. I was hurt. Like, I remember calling her like, man, what's this about? She wouldn't respond, and the overall argument came to was you make it seem like I don't do nothing for my kids, and I'm like, no, I don't make it seem like anything. I'm like, there's a lot of stuff started coming up that I started hearing. So I started hearing that I did this, I did that. I don't take care of my kids. I'm like, everything was complete false. So my shock, I was like, you know what? Whatever, go to court, go to child support court. I had to, I'm gonna explain it in detail with you a little. I had to, it's 3 judges in the city of Rockford that handles family law. 2 men, 1 woman. Now it's 1 more judge they added. And the judge I had was a Black woman. I respect her, I looked at her story, I did my research on her, but she's the lowest rated judge in the state of Illinois for fathers. So I remember going to lawyers when I got the letter for child support, like, man, my kids live with me, like, I shouldn't even be in this situation. And I'm like, I knew the laws already. I researched the laws already because my brother's a lawyer. So I knew that I agreed to 50-50 right when I got divorced 3 years before. And so I knew how my legal rights still to not be paying anything because I had my kids. So the laws had changed that year. And I think my ex-wife had people around her that was kind of educating her on the laws. And they changed for the worse for me because they changed it based on overnights. And on paper, we agreed to 50-50, but you had to agree to a certain overnight 50-50. So the lawyers I met with, I learned quickly that most lawyers don't care about you. They're not going to fight for you the way you can fight for you. Everyone I went to, they was like, you a man, like, you need to switch judges for one. I was like, man, look, I already been through this. I've been in front of this judge when I was going through my divorce for a whole year, 3 years previously. I'm like, man, I'm not about to go through this whole process and switch judges. I said, man, whatever happens, happens. I'm going to fight for my kids. Either you can take the money I offer to pay you, or I'll do it myself. I think it was a blessing that I always had grit in me to want to understand everything. So what I did, I hired my lawyer originally. The first trial that I had for first court that I had for child support, he showed up late. And so basically I was sitting there with her lawyer in front of the judge, and they stood us next to each other, and I seen the paperwork. And when I seen the paper, I was able to realize some of the stuff she had on the paperwork was a lie. So I proved it to the judge right away. Like, my lawyer ended up coming in, but he didn't have to do anything for me because I already started myself. And I'm like, that paperwork's a lie. I wanted to subpoena her records to show that she's lying about working, that I take care of my kids. And so her lawyer, she lied to her lawyer, so the judge dropped it. So that was January 2000, I want to say 2018, maybe 2019. So we leave there. When I got engaged, my relationship became rocky with her. We leave court, and I'm like, man, what's the issue? Like, why are we in court? Like, I'm trying to figure out what's going on. And she just, at this point, she's angry. She don't want to talk. I'm like, she's saying that I said this about her. I'm saying this and that. I'm like, I don't talk about you. Like, in my household, we don't talk about my marriage. We talk about my ex-wife. Did I hear a lot of stuff? Yeah. And as a man, as a father, it hurts to hear you not taking care of responsibility. And it was completely false. but it hurts as a man. Like as a father, I take pride in being a father. So like, it made me angry, but I just let it go for a while. Then next thing you know, I find another letter saying I'm going to court for custody. So actually, let me rewind. You got any questions while I'm talking? Just feel free to just stop me and ask
No,
me.
I think so far, you had 50-50 custody with your ex-wife.
I had
It was
50-50
never
originally, right after the divorce.
it was never an issue, but that was based on the law at the time. Um,
Yeah,
your kids were mostly with you. On the weekends, they would visit their mother.
yeah.
During this time, the law changed, and your ex-wife was maybe hearing this from people around her. Next thing you know, you get a letter that you have family court for child support, and you were taken aback by that. You did some research on the judge that you had been in front of before. She was a low-rated judge in Illinois, with respect to with fathers. She
Lowest
doesn't
rated judge in the state of Illinois for fathers.
for
But
fathers. That's right. And so you
so
would go to lawyers and they would say you need a different judge. They were kind of hesitant to help you out. And so you said, well, if you don't help me, I'm going to do it myself. Um, when you went to court, your lawyer was late. Your ex-wife had filed some paperwork with her lawyer, and you knew that these were not truthful, and you had her subpoenaed, and
I
and
requested
then
the records, but it didn't get that far because her her lawyer messaged her to find out she was lying.
mhm.
So they dropped it right away.
Okay, that was
So
dropped. And then after this was dropped, you tried to work things out with her, find out why she was trying to go through this process. But then you also received another letter to reopen the custody that was already established based on the prior laws.
so let me rewind it a little. So
Okay.
this happened like, so I got the letter January for child support. I went to court maybe July. And in this process, I went through a lot of changes. We had bought a house, me and my
Mm-hmm.
fiance. I had my kids every day still. I
Mm-hmm.
went through a job change, and I think that's what spurred her to want to try to go to court to take my custody from me. Before I went to the job change, I spoke with her like, I got to do this year contract for a certain shift for the new job. Was it okay? I took like a $15,000 pay cut to go to a new job I looked at the towards aerospace, so I took a pay cut to go to this new job. And before I did, I spoke to her like, I'm gonna need you to step up a little more. You got the kids got to be with you a little more right now for this year. So in that process, our relationship, me and her, just deteriorated more. I started getting kind of, I wouldn't say harassed, but like I started noticing more people that I was previously in a relationship started treating me differently, started acting differently towards me. I started hearing my name pop up more in conversations. And I'm like, I was like, man, like, where's this coming from? And come to find out, it was just, she was out here trashing me. Like, I mean, it was just a lot of false information put out there. And I'm looking like, okay, you know what? So I dealt with it. I reacted. I lashed out a lot. Because everybody that knew me at this time, they knew me. My number one thing was a father. Like, I never not been, the longest I ever not seen my kids for 2 days my whole life. So, so December of 2019, I think. I think it was 2019. I went to the courthouse. I said, you know what? I'm tired of all the lying. I went to the courthouse. I filed paperwork for full custody. Come to find out, she already had filed paperwork for full custody a couple of days before me. She didn't tell me. I mentioned that I'm going to go file paperwork to her multiple times because I got tired of the garbage. Um, she filed a couple of days before me. I filed. I get a court date in front of the judge. I'm at this time. I'm like, you know what? I'm representing myself. She got a lawyer. I show up in front of the judge. I, I'm a pause the story and just tell you about how the system is. The system, I don't think the system is biased towards women. Like that's the normal thing we grew up hearing is the system favor women. I think the system gives a leg up to women in the beginning because most men aren't in there with information that shows that they're part of the kid's life. When I mean part of the kid's life, I mean like, are we going to the doctor with our kids? Are we going to parent-teacher conferences with our kids? Are we raising our kids every day like most women do? Like, it's a big difference between being a dad and being a father. So when I went to court in the beginning, it wasn't necessarily the judge was just biased. She sees hundreds of cases a year. So what makes me any different than any of the men coming in there and say, I raised my kids just like saying it? What I did that kind of saved me was I always kept all schoolwork, all report cards. I built relationships with all teachers from my oldest daughter is in 7th grade. So from the time she's in 1st grade, even when I was married still, I have file cabinets of homework. I have file cabinets of dental records, birth certificates, medical records. I went to all doctor appointments, all dentist appointments, all parent-teacher conferences. If my kids acted up in school, the teachers called me, they emailed me. So I built a relationship with all my kids' teachers and doctors over 6 years, 7 years span.
Do you mind if we talk a little bit about that? Like, because earlier you were saying that when you had your first daughter, you instantly loved fatherhood, and we got into a little bit about that. And you said you had previous experience with your nieces and your nephews, and and then when you had your daughter, it was different, and you always wanted to be involved. Did you keep all of those records, the grades, the dental records, the emails from the teachers and stuff like that, just because like there wasn't a dad to do that, a father to do that for you? Does it come from the same place that you just wanted to be really involved in your kid's life? Why did you have all that stuff?
I kept it because I wanted my daughter, like her paintings from 1st grade. I wanted her to, when she got older, to see her own paintings. Like, you know, all kids do the handprints. So I kept that stuff because I wanted her to see her. But she's 25 years old. I wanted her to go back and say, I painted this at 5 years old. So I kept that stuff, and it's hard for me to get rid of stuff. Like, I organize everything. So it wasn't necessarily that I had a plan that I might need this one day. I just don't throw, I can keep everything. I just don't throw away important things to me. Like, if it's an art project my kids did, I keep it. And still to this day, I do the same thing. Like, but in reality, it saved me in court because it showed that I was heavily involved in my kid's life. So that was a benefit. And I noticed throughout going to court, the judge I seen it, and I had people in court, because when the first couple of times you go to court, you're in a normal court where you're not even in trial. You have other cases going on. So I would get messages from people on Facebook that I didn't even know that was in court. And they would be like, man, you did a good job. The judge she's on your side. I can see her. She's like, wow, why is he in court? Like, that's the feeling I started getting, and that's the feeling my kid's mother started getting. So it was probably the worst possible time for me to go to court, try to get custody, because we had COVID. Everything shut down. If COVID didn't happen, my case would have been over in maybe March, early March.
Yeah, that's when we first got stay-at-home orders in Illinois. March 23rd, I think. It was like a day after my birthday, or maybe March 13th, because I remember we celebrated my birthday and we ordered some food, and it was a contactless thing because of COVID. So it would have been over, but then
So let me explain this too. Like, I believe in God. And so like the last couple of years, I kind of walked away from God because I was going through my own transition. And like, I had my doubts, like, if God real, then why do people go through this type of stuff? So during this time period, I feel like I was awakening myself a lot. Like, you know, I was mad, I was angry what I was going through, but at the same time, I was learning so much about myself. So I kept getting hit with every tool in the shed, basically. Like, man, I went to court maybe 3-4 times before COVID hit, and I swayed the judge to understand that I was a better fit. And the whole time I was going for full custody, I didn't want full custody. I just wanted my respect as a parent. Like, and I offered her every week. I offered her, man, look, we can do 50-50. I want the major decision making as far as schooling, because that was a lot of issues I had with schooling with her, with my kid's mother. So I kept offering her these deals, and I think her pride was in her way so much, and I think her new group of friends she was around was influencing her, because she didn't have not one reason to the judge or why she deserved custody. She couldn't tell the judge he's a bad father. She tried to, but the judge was like, she threw that out right away. She was like, no, he's a great father. I can tell you that now by just what I had. And so COVID happened, shut the courts down. I spent a lot of money already because I originally had my lawyer from the previous year. So I paid him up front, and I didn't even get the services I paid for. So I spent a lot of money. Then it was starting to cost me a lot of money too, because I was missing work, a lot of different things, etc. Everything opened back up. She came in with a new lawyer, and the new lawyer she came in tried to get everything dropped right away, and I kind of panicked. This is around May, and this I learned terminology, court lingo, court terminology, and she's trying to get my case dropped because I worded things wrong way in all my motions. So I had to go back to my lawyer and have him change paperwork for me. Up until the end, I did all my own motions. I represented myself in court, and if I didn't represent myself up until June, July, I would have lost custody soon. The court opened back up in June. So when I got with him, he showed up to court for me, but once again, he was late. The lawyer thinks it's funny. And I'm gonna explain why I prefer any fathers to represent themselves. But she lied to her lawyer again. She didn't tell her lawyer the truth that she originally filed the motion for full custody. So I was able to keep my case going. And so in the midst of all this, I didn't present all this evidence to the judge. You gotta start thinking, like, the judge has caught on her lie maybe 5-6 times now in the midst of this 5-6 months. So it was just basically it was time for me I feel like, to close the door on this. So that's when you get the guardian ad litems. I don't know if you ever heard of guardian ad litems and mediators and stuff?
No, I've never heard of that.
The mediator is a person they give you before a guardian ad litem, and the person's job is to try to come to terms on two parents that can't get along. And the reality of a mediator, I feel like, is to make it worse, because if two parents can't get along over their kids, a person is not going to help them. One person that never met them is not going to help them. And that's where I think the bias came into. I had a woman mediator, and she didn't even help me. She made it worse for me. Only thing she did was recommend for me to give up more time.
Okay, can we pause right there? So, because I think it's important. I think it's really important what you said earlier. You said that growing up, we kind of believed that family court is biased in a positive way towards women. And then you said, in my experience, that's not necessarily true. It might give them a leg up, but it's because these judges are seeing so many dads go through the system, and a lot of them don't have the things that you had, don't have proof that they're involved in their kids' life, that they're raising their kids day in and day out. And so that's kind of the leg up that the woman has. But now you said that this is where the real bias comes in with women in a positive way, is with the mediator. So not in front of the judge. I think that's important. Not in front of the judge, in front of the mediator is where you started to see the bias that we've been kind of told about and kind of assumed. Is that right?
Yeah, the judge got too many cases to look at one case individually. So they rely on their mediators, and their right-hand voice is the guardian ad litem. The mediator, to me, does nothing for your case but collects money. It made my case worse with my kid's mother because it made us argue. So after we left the mediator, I realized then, I was like, you know what? It's going to come down to me fighting hard for myself even more. we went back to court maybe 3-4 times. She assigned us a guardian ad litem. So one thing I knew about my guardian, I researched everybody. I researched the mediator, the guardian ad litem, the judge. I did everything, statistics on how a man win. So when I got recommended a guardian ad litem, I was going to court dates, just normal court dates, when I wasn't even in the court, just to see who was representing who and what guardian ad litem they had during their trial. And so I went to maybe 5-6 court dates, and I learned that there's one guardian ad litem that represented men. Well, let me rewind. The guardian ad litem doesn't represent anybody. Mm-hmm. It's a medium put in place for them to interview all the teachers, all the friends, all the doctors, review all the information that both parents give them. Mm. Interview you, come in your home, interview your fiance, your spouse, interview the kids.
Just anybody
and one thing I learned about my guardian ad litem was she was fair. Mm. She was giving men the real chance to tell their sides of the story. And then I had a couple of my friends that went through similar situations as me that won full custody of their kids. And they had the same guardian ad litem. So when they both explained to me, like, man, she's the best one you could possibly get. So I did my interview. I had maybe 4 interviews with her. Her lawyer didn't have no tactic against me, but to say I was a difficult parent to co-parent with. And my tactic was to show that she wasn't reliable or wasn't helping me parent at all. It was just for more of a look. So once it came down to it, I realized her lawyer didn't have no argument, because the more we went through the case, she gave me so much resistance as parenting. The judge and the guardian ad litem started realizing she was the problem. It wasn't necessarily me. Like, I know you see me a lot of times probably going on social media and talk about my case and talk about what I go through. I don't think people understand what you go through, because so many times men are so afraid to talk about it openly. And I was like, you know what? I couldn't hold it in anymore. Like, I was like, man, I just want to parent my kids. So by me talking about it openly, it kind of opened the door for a lot of moms to come in and say, man, look, it gets better. Like, just keep your head up. I got a lot of backlash from talking about it openly, but I got a lot of support also. And throughout all the interviews guardian ad litem did and conducted, she recommended to the judge that I get full custody. And so when they gave me full custody, I remember they gave me full custody on a Thursday, and her lawyer went crazy, panicked. Her lawyer pushed for a decision. And so when they recommended me full custody, her lawyer tried to take it back and say, we don't want a decision yet. We want to go to trial. And they were like, well, you messaged us all day. Yeah, I need a decision today. They gave me full custody. I went home. I said, you know what? I don't want full custody. I want my kids to have both parents. Mm-hmm. I had my lawyer then. My lawyer, I will say this, man, my lawyer didn't have to do any work because I did my own work. All he did for me was make sure I didn't step on my own feet in court by saying the wrong thing.
Okay.
I drew up my own terms of what I want in the 50-50 custody. I asked for all the major decision making. I submitted it to my lawyer and I offered it to her lawyer. And I said, look, I don't want full custody. I want to raise my kids, mom and dad, because I got a 12-year-old daughter. And my fiance is a great bonus mom. But I wanted my kids to understand, like, even when people hurt you, you don't gotta hate them. Like, I don't hate my kid's mother. And the whole time we was going through this, I didn't hate her. I just wanted her to come to her terms and just put some respect on my name as a father. So I drew the 50-50 up, offered it to her. She denied it a couple of times because she was like, nope, I'm gonna take this to trial. And I'm like, my lawyer was explaining to her, her lawyer was explaining to her, there's nothing you can do. It's over. Like, they did all the interviews. Only thing we're gonna do is pay another $10,000. And I'm like, no matter what, we can pay this money, but you already lost. So that's why I talked about it a little at the time period, but I didn't go too deep into it because I had to wait for another month to get the final decision. And it wasn't going to be a trial. It was going to be like, we already interviewed everybody. We made a decision. This is what you asked for. We made a decision. So that's where we've been kind of at the last month. Like, I'm still next week I should have my paperwork with everything finalized, but I'm done with court for the most part.
Okay. So is well, I don't know if you could say or not, but is it going to be, are you going to get full custody, or are you going to do
So I didn't take the full custody. I gave her the 50-50.
mhm.
We have a great 50-50 schedule where it's the same exact thing every week. Like, one week I have certain days, the next week she has certain days. Um, I got a little more decision making, but I would never be in court again. Like, if we ever go to court again, I get full custody no matter what. Like, that's what the main thing I want her to understand. Like, I never tried to take my kids away from their mother. I just
Mhm.
want her to put some respect on my name as a father, because this is my number one joy in life, is being a father.
Mhm.
And I could have took the full custody, and a lot of my friends was like, man, she wouldn't have gave you the same thing. And I believe it. I don't think she would have gave me
But
if she
you're
would have
not
went full
her.
custody.
You're not her. I mean, you're Quan.
Exactly. And that's why, and the thing is, I had to understand how my ex-wife felt. We didn't have a bad divorce. It's a lot of he say, she say, and we both got our own stories on what our divorce consisted of and why it happened and everything. And so I said I had to look at it from her perspective, and she was a hurt woman, and I think that's why she put me through what she put me through as far as a kid, the custody battle. She want me to accept something that's not true, and I would never accept that. And we still don't get along with that aspect, because I believe, me personally, I feel like I'm an honest person,
Mhm.
and I can't accept a lie or a false narrative that's not the truth.
Mhm.
So the way she tried to paint the picture is I'm never going to agree to, because it's the complete opposite of what happened. And I
Mhm.
think that's the reason she tried to put me in court. Like, because I was in court 4.5 years after I was divorced. Like, it don't make
Mhm.
sense as a parent. Like, and I always say this, like, how can a man be a great parent while he with the woman, and all of a sudden he's a bad parent that he's not with the woman? It just don't make sense to me. You
Mhm.
understand what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
that's not reality.
Yeah. Like it's not a switch.
Yeah,
It's
like,
not a
it just
switch.
doesn't happen that way.
If because I think that's important what you're saying, because I think the opposite would be true too. Like if you're with the mother of your children and you're a bad father, and then you separate, you're all of a sudden not just going to be a good father. You're going to continue to be a bad
Yeah.
father. It's not a switch. So that's exactly right. If you were a good father when you were with her, and then you separated, it's not a switch. You aren't all of a sudden just going to be a bad father. Maybe a good father could become a bad father gradually, and a bad father could become a good father gradually. But it's yeah, I completely agree with you. It's not a switch that just because you're no longer with that person, you're going to start being the complete opposite of what you were when you were with her.
Yeah, I think
What is
over time. You said what?
I was gonna ask you, how do you pronounce that? The person that reviews the case and interviews everyone. What is that called?
Guardian ad litem.
Guardium, litem,
Ad litem.
at litem.
Yeah.
So do you think? So you were saying that that's like the judge's right hand person.
The judge goes
So
up her word, or his or her word.
so do you think that do you think most guardian ad litems are like this woman that you had, or do you think maybe there are other uh, guardian ad litems that are maybe more like the mediator, that um, might be biased towards the woman, or might not look at things? It sounds like this, in your experience, this guardian ad litem looked at things very objectively. Like you said, she had no agenda. She just did the interviews, reviewed the paperwork, and then made her decision and said to the judge, "Seems to me Quan is a good father." So,
Um,
what do you think about that?
I think the guardian ad litem number one job is to find the kind of the weed the lies out,
Hmm.
and figure out the truth as much as possible.
Hmm.
Their job is to go into, because if I call the school and say, man, I need a printout of everything. I need y'all to write a statement saying that I was the one taking care of the kids. A lot of schools are reluctant, and I got hit
Hmm.
with a lot of that too. But I had a great relationship with all the principals, teachers from every school. So all of them wrote me personal letters. Like principals, teachers wrote me personal
Amazing.
letters stating everything. I had a little resistance in the beginning at one of the principals, but when the guardian ad litem was able to subpoena them to testify,
Oh,
and
okay.
so she knew when I said the resistance I had, she knew the exact principal that didn't want to cooperate, and she's able to get them to cooperate the right way, and that helped me out even more because she knew I was telling the truth. I went into this like, you know what? I said, if I'm gonna lose, well, I knew I was gonna lose custody of my kids. The worst thing that could happen to me was, this is what I tell people: my kids are at the private school. If I was a bad father, I would have no problem paying child support. I do believe in child support system as parents that not taking care of their kids. I paid for private school, and if I would have paid child support, it would have been less than private school. So that's why I want to straighten that out first. And secondly, is like nothing can happen bad to me by losing if I lost, because I would just pay child support then, and I would still have my kids at least 50% of the time. So that's why I say, you know what, just go for full. And in guardian ad litem, I think most of them are exactly like her. Their
Oh, that's
goal is
great.
to
That's
get
great news.
like, so it's not, the system is not as biased as people think. I
Mm,
just think that it's good father, it's good dads, and there's good fathers. It's a
mm.
little difference, but when I look at you, I see you as being a father. Like I see you doing the
Thank you.
caring about the details of
Mm,
parenting. Good dads don't care about, I ain't gonna say all dads, but a lot of men don't care about the details of parenting.
mm,
Some men think it's babysitting their kids when the wife ain't around.
mm,
Or like when the wife's at home, the first thing they do is give the kids to the mother.
mm,
That's not good parenting to me.
mm,
That's like, that's just being a dad. That's not being a father. Me, I look at fathering as how much stress can I take off my woman or my wife as a parent. Like,
mm.
you understand what I'm saying? Like, I take
Yeah.
pride in every one of the details of raising
Mm,
kids, like potty training. I take pride in that. Going to the park every day, I take pride in that.
mm.
Some men don't want to be involved in that type of
Oh,
stuff.
yeah.
Like cheer practice.
Mm.
Like it's just like you gotta, that's the big difference between dads and fathers to me. Like that's one reason I think I won, because I showed that I was a father, just not a dad. It's easy to be a
Mm,
dad, but it's harder to be a father.
mm. Well, I mean, yes, I agree with that, uh, great fathers care about the details. And I think it's important. Well, it's important for me to say, because I don't want to speak for you, and you're doing a phenomenal job explaining everything. Um, it's just because you care about the details doesn't mean it's not hard. I'm speaking for
It's
myself.
hard.
Like, yeah, it's really, sometimes it's really, because even though like you said, fatherhood is like it's one of the greatest joys in your life. That's what you said, and for me, it's also one of the greatest joys. Caring about the details is hard. So that doesn't mean that just because you do care about details that it's not hard, and that sometimes you got to catch yourself a lot, not slipping, and not, like you said, you're trying to take away stress from the mother. Sometimes you add stress, and so a lot of times you got to check yourself
Yeah.
and make sure that you get back on the ball. I've only been a dad 2.5 years, and I cannot count the number of times that I've had to correct um, myself. But it's great news that in your experience the guardian ad litems are exactly like the one that you had. I think I think it's great news that you came out on top. That you it sounds to me, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that this was all about. It really hurt you that people didn't think that you were a great father, and that's what this was about. It wasn't necessarily about, I want full custody because that's what I want, or I want 50-50 because that's what I want. It was, these things are not true about me as a father. This is what my life is about, and I need to. It was about your reputation as a father. That's what it sounds like. Is that right?
Yeah. My previously I never shared my kids on social media a lot in the past. Like I don't, as a father, the last couple of years I use social media a lot more, but I was engaged in raising my kids a lot. So I didn't post everything we do. We never post. Like we go
That's normal.
on trips. I don't post it. So it's like, and my kid's mother, she's very good at the perfect picture. So it was easy for people to say, but you don't post your kids. She always posts the kids. And I'm like, well, I don't want to post my kids. So it was about my reputation, but it was also about the truth. Like, and I would say this, man, like my kid's mother, I don't hate her. I don't think she's a bad mother either. I think it's areas that I would love to see her improve on, but she has some things that I'm not good at. Like I was never emotional towards my kids. With my oldest daughter, I didn't teach her emotion because I grew up from the streets, and so I didn't show emotion. So my kid's mother is very emotional with my kids. Like she's very motherly. So that's it's aspects we both bring to the table, and that's why I wanted both of us being in their lives too. I could have done took the full custody, moved out of town, started over. But it was like I don't think any parent deserves not to have their kids unless it's a big issue. And I didn't think she was an issue. I just didn't understand why we was in court, to tell you the truth. So
that's do you have more time?
I got about a couple more minutes. I got to go to work in a little bit.
Okay. Thank you so much. So one of the things that I wanted to ask you, what you just said is great because I follow you on Instagram, and sometimes on your story, you say that the best thing for the kids is co-parenting, and I think you're backing up what you said, what you constantly say on your story by like you said, you could have gotten full custody, but you went back and you said, no, I want co-parenting. Why do you think co-parenting is the best for the kids? If you could just briefly explain that, that way we don't, make you late for work or anything like that.
The emotional standpoint, I think me, I'm stuck in some of my ways. I don't believe in. It's bad to say in this generation, I guess, but like I don't believe in participation trophies. I don't believe in babying your kids to be comfortable with accepting nothing than the best. And so my way is not necessarily the right way. Their mother is opposite. She believes in good job no matter what. And so it's a balance. Like I teach my kids, work hard, don't accept nothing less than the best. And she's able to balance that for me. So that's where I believe like we both play important roles in raising our kids. And then I got girls. Like my kids, my fiance is a great bonus mom. And she does a great job of teaching them morals, ethics, and all that stuff. But at the same time, she's not their mother, and she respects that. So it's like they need to be around their mother. And my kids love their mother too. And I think I settled also because my oldest daughter, I asked her what she wanted. And when they interviewed her, she gave me her statement. And her statement was like, I love both my parents. I just want them to be
beautiful.
Happy. So that's another reason I say, you know what, this is the best decision. Like she's 12 years old. She plays a big part in who I am. Like she don't understand. Like she's gonna learn one day that she changed my life for the better multiple times. So like that's my strength right there. And when I read that statement from her, I was like, you know what, it's bigger than what we both want. We got to do what's best for them.
That's great. I think you explained that beautifully. So I think maybe just end with giving your advice to fathers, especially. I mean, you've been obviously in the game a lot longer than me, and it's not a game, right? You got 4 kids, I got 2. So what would your advice be to young dads, and what would your advice be to anyone to any man out there going through the family court who wants the best for the kids? It's about the kids, like you did.
My advice is get one woman, love your kids, love your woman. If you're not ready to settle in a relationship, I mean, the best thing I could say is don't take your time and learn yourself first as a man. Like
Mhm.
it's not don't get sucked into society and say you gotta have sex with this woman because she's beautiful, whatever. Take your time
Mhm.
and learn yourself, learn her. Because once that kid come in this world, if y'all both not ready, it's gonna be arguments about who's the better parent to raise a kid.
Mhm.
I don't want no man going through the court system. I don't want no man raising a kid without the mother being his wife. You know, like it's the best thing in the world to have kids and family. So it's like you just gotta we gotta be men, we gotta be better men, and we gotta be better fathers overall. Like
Mhm.
it's easy to be just like everybody else in society or be the stereotype, but we gotta
Mhm.
be better fathers. I understand women's frustration with men and feeling like they're alone in a lot of things. We just gotta be, we gotta lead. Like I see you talk about that a lot too. Men got to step up and lead. And that only way you can lead is by setting a good example, you know?
Yeah, I do. I think that's great advice, especially for someone like me. Thank you for that advice. I've got a son. Oh, God willing, I'll have a daughter. I'll have more sons. Thank you so much. Um, Quon Denny has a YouTube channel. It's actually featured here on my YouTube channel. What's the name of the YouTube channel?
I think it's under my name, Quon Denny, and
I think it is. I
got
think
like
you're
five
right.
videos I ever dropped yet. I'm trying to wait to the new year. I got a lot of stuff coming for the new year. So I'm kind of just I'm getting back my confidence. I'm getting back
Mhm.
to being me. Like I lost a piece of me going through this court case.
Makes
And I
sense.
forgot who I was for a long time, man. Like that's why I
Mhm.
tell you don't want to go through this, man. Like you
Mhm.
lose a piece of yourself. So
Mhm.
I'm just now getting that back. I'm getting my confidence back. I'm finding my mental is stronger than it's ever been. I'm happy. I'm happy for the first time in 2 years. Like
That's
mentally, you
that's
know.
that's exciting. Yeah. So the YouTube name is Quon Denny. It's featured here on this YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe to this YouTube channel and to Quon Denny's YouTube channel. Make sure you like it. Leave a comment, letting us know what you liked about the advice that Quon Denny gave. Instagram handle Quon Mr. Royal Living. Is there an
Yeah,
underscore in there?
yeah. Mr. underscore Royal Living.
Okay. I'm glad that you mentioned that you lost. I mean, I'm not glad that that happened, but I'm glad that you mentioned that entire thing. Uh, I hope you come back on to talk about your personal trainer. You've helped me in the past lose some weight. I've see you've been working on getting back on stage as a bodybuilder, but also I'd like to have you back on to talk about mental health because that's you mentioned that you struggled with that in this process and that you had to really make sure that your mental health was on point. Sound
Yeah,
good?
yeah, man. I would love to, man. I appreciate you having me on, man.
Yeah, no problem. So thanks again for being on, and just everybody out there, remember what Venerable Archbishop Fulton J. Sheen taught us: your life is worth living. Love you, my guys and my girls. Bye.